Men of Reddit, what was the worst thing that happened when you approached a girl? How did it affect you? We had talked online and she sounded interested. We met and things were lukewarm, but I thought maybe just nerves. We talk a bit and go our separate ways. I talk to her that night and she says there's a problem. I ask what? She says, "You are not attractive." Apostrophe. We had talked a few times before. I went up and took my shot. She walked away without saying anything. Whatever. It stung, but I'd live. Wasn't the worst rejection I'd ever had. That changed when one of her friends later approached me in the middle of a large group of people and loudly declared that she had been told to tell me that the girl said no and would never have any interest in me. Just like, I got it well enough when you just walked away. Was the added humiliation necessary? Met a girl in my CL but in college. We hung out a bunch. Flirted. Talked about what each other were looking for in a partner/relationship. Where she essentially described me and said she wanted a serious relationship and couldn't bring herself to fool around or have FWBs. A mutual female friend told me that they had a conversation where the girl told our friend she was interested in me. The weekend after that specific conversation happened, we spent a night out together, ending with her sitting on my lap and my truck in her driveway for around 20 minutes before she went inside. A week or two later she went back home to her parents' place, a 2-hour drive away. She invited me to come see her and hang out in the hot tub while she had the place to herself. While in the hot tub, the conversation was very flirty and led to me making a comment about me wanting to date her. Her response was ooh, while she tried to distance herself as much as possible while trying to cover herself up. I have yet to ever experience a mind duck of the like since. I was talking to a girl in a club once. Went well. Lots of flirting. Made out a little. Left the club together and started towards her place. Saw me in better light and said EWW no and walked back into the club. Was in a relationship in which I loved her very much for 7 years before getting married for a year and a half before she left me for someone she says she loved since before we were married. I'm still dealing with feelings. It's been 6 months. Met someone at an event and within about an hour I knew she was into me. I asked her out. She said yes and we swapped numbers. Then we ended up making out most of the night. We went our separate ways. But before I left, she said make sure you message me tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, of course I will. I stuck to my word. But she never replied. It sucked because she was really hot and seemed to be really into me. I think I've got better with rejection. But having my hopes raised then dashed isn't a nice feeling. I went on a blind date with a friend of a friend once. We had a good time. I even got a kiss before we said goodnight. We set up a second date for the following Friday after work. I called 30 minutes before the date to confirm we're still on. I jokingly said, "Don't stand me up." She says, "I'd never do that." An hour and a half later, I'm heading home. She stood me up. Our mutual friend hears nothing from her. Calls her several times. Doesn't pick up the phone. Doesn't call back. It's like she vanished off the face of the earth. I find out months later that she finally calls the mutual friend back. Tells a story about a good friend getting into a motorcycle accident and almost dying. She's supposedly at this guy's side in the hospital the whole time. Then she asks our mutual friend if she knew if he'd be interested in going out. Our friend relays the question to me and I think about it. I tell her no. All she had to do was take 5 minutes and show me a little courtesy, but she didn't. Her loss. I approached my crush in high school. I gathered courage for around 2 years to do so. Then, I eventually asked her out. She said, no, EWW. So, I think I don't care about that anymore, but it left a scar for sure. Kinda similar. Prettiest girl in school. Me, an underachiever who suddenly had a injection of bravado. Literally got laughed at. Funny now but stung at the time. I don't know if it counts because it was online, but I'll tell you anyway. I super liked a girl on Tinder and we matched. Then I said, I guess it's my lucky day. Apostrophe. Then she immediately replied with, but mine isn't. Apostrophe. And unmatched right after. I felt like trash. You're like my little brother on a first date. Kinda because I made her laugh a bunch. Then she complained about her abusive ex the whole time. I almost got knocked out and kicked out of the club XD. Context: I was at a disco with my friends and close to me I saw a girl that was giving like help me looks. Saw the guy that was dancing with her pretty much harassing her / throwing himself over her, and she was clearly uncomfortable. So my moral warning light up even while being drunk. I looked at her eyes sort of to reconfirm that it wasn't the alcohol playing tricks on me and decided to step in and dance with her so the other dude would back off. Came in like a champ, pretending we were longtime friends, hugs and all. Told her that we should catch up at the bar, and when I was going to grab her hand to get away from the harassing dude, I turned back and saw the fist in direct collision course to my face. Managed to actually think this is going to hurt before blacking out for a couple of seconds. Security thought I started the fight and kicked me out. She came out to explain. Then what happened? She got me back and invited me to a drink, thanked me for stepping in. We hung out for only that drink and parted ways. How it affected me, I actually started to pay more attention to body language overall and call out those behaviors. Unfortunately nothing more than a sore nose and jaw for a couple of days. Edit. Corrected my bad writing. Sh says aren't you like a kid? Apostrophe. Ash 3 years younger than me. Baby face cries slowly. I was 19 and asked out a 21-year girl. She replied you're not even 21 yet. What are we gonna do? Go have a coffee? It made me feel like poop for about 2 seconds until I realized with a response like that, I was probably dodging a bullet. Indeed. That's exactly how it was. Asked a girl out and had her laugh in my face and told me she'd never date an Asian guy. Later heard her talking to her friend about how dare a chink ask her out. I've also been told by another girl's parents that they'd never let their daughter with a Asian like me. Both those experiences really messed with me, and I have a lot of issues putting myself out there because I'm scared that will happen again. Approaching a girl at a bar. She slowly turns to her friends and they burst out laughing. You don't realize how much it takes to work up the courage to approach someone. I was about 12. It was maybe the third girl I had asked out in my life. First 2 girls were gentle no's. She was someone I grew up with, small town. My mates thought she liked me too and hyped me up for it. So I asked her out when we were on the bus to school and she screamed. Not a happy scream, but a scream of repulsion. Took me years to have the confidence to ask someone else out again, but felt like this moment stunted me for about a decade. And I thought I was unattractive until maybe 2 years ago, now 26. Welp. I don't expect much sympathy for this. But growing up I was a good looking, something very good looking, dude without an ounce of confidence. So I'd find myself in situations where I'd get signals from somebody to come over and chat them up. And sometimes I would get up the nerve to do so, only to be hit by that instant look of disappointment. Like they've just tasted sour milk. They were expecting somebody suave to go with the looks I guess. Again and again. The look is burned into my soul. My only girlfriend during high school lived 30 miles away. We met online, which was super uncommon in the days of dial-up internet. I was super shy and socially awkward as a teenager. The only girl at my school that I tried to date was this brunette who sat behind me in sophomore year English class. She'd initiate conversations and laugh at my dumber jokes, so I assumed she might be interested. She wasn't, and I still remember her telling me no in front of a bunch of kids and trying to set me up with her friend, who also wasn't interested in me. Needless to say, I didn't go to senior prom and hated high school in general. Alright, this is gonna be a long one. First year of high school. One girl in my CL butt was the prettiest being I have ever encountered. My one and only love at first strike. I was extremely shy as a child and really did not have a lot of talk with girls before, so I've put a love note in her personal locker. She found it with a bunch of her friends and literally laughed at it. I saw it farther away and was petrified of the situation. Although, she took me apart and gently refused my offer to date. Her reaction toward me was really nice honestly. But the word got around, and people started bullying me for my softness not being man and ought to go directly to her. And that. For months. I lose all of my few school friends at the time and rapidly somber into depression. That followed me through all my pooper high school years. But hey, that taught me to not give a duck and enjoy life as a human being. Now I'm 23 and living my life at the fullest. Since I finished my high school everything got better. Seriously guys, develop your passions. Make something of your life that you enjoy. Learn things you love and most importantly, make yourself different. Don't blend in. Be yourself. My high school crush was at a party and we were all out in the hot tub. I was fat, but so was she, albeit not as much. When I finally made an attempt to hit on her, she said to look at that publicly and loudly. I was allowed to go out past curfew once a month and that was my night. I went home early and had to deal with my dad asking why I was home way before I said I would be. This was like I don't know 1995 to 1997 or so. A friend of mine tried to hook me up with this girl. When I went to her house to meet her, she was nice and all, but I just was not sure if anything would happen between us. I got home and a guy called me to say that he was going to date her. So much for that. Now girls just say, sorry I'm taken. This isn't exactly what you were asking for, but, and hold on, it's a long one. So it's a story about this girl I had a crush on since primary school. In high school now, like 5 years later, I still have a crush on her, but I ignored it for the most part because, what was I expecting after that long? In grade 10, and we are close friends, I for some reason decide that hey, let me get this off my chest. What's the worst that could happen? So I text her and tell her that I had a crush on her. I didn't say from how long ago though. She goes ahead and ignores me for like 2 months and demands an apology for saying I liked her. On top of that, I hear from her friends that they've been speaking about it and she's been a-wing about it the whole time. She then kept going behind my back and laughing at me to her friends for 2 years after that, saying I'm obsessed with her. I hear all of this from one of our mutual friends. Shout out to her. So I stopped talking to her altogether. After I hear this, I still go and joke and chat to her friend group because some of our mutual friends are in her group. Friend group split up. That's a whole other dumb thing, but in a hoe. But I flat out ignore her. Not spitefully. I just genuinely felt she didn't want anything to do with me. So I left it at that. A few months into matric/grade 12 and her friends come to me saying that she, crush, is sorry and wants me to start talking to her again. So yeah, that was 2 years ago. Kind of figured I'm not going to be wanted by anyone after that. But it is what it is. Life goes on. And dying alone. I sound so dramatic. Lol, isn't too bad. I got self-love to work on. I don't know really. There are a few. I struck a fine balance between what seemed first date psychos or just struck out. For the most part I'd say it made it harder for me to approach girls and often made me question how people end up this way. Told her I liked her. Got an odd response. Not a bad one. Just not feelings mutual. Felt like an idiot. Heavily emphasized. And more or less choose to never pursue anyone again. Wrecked my already low self-esteem. That's okay though. I feel like I'm actually doing better in my life than I would be. Cut a lot of the filler from my life. I didn't approach her. Actually I didn't want to, but my friend who I was with goes, hey, my friend here is single. I hate when people do that BTW. She goes, no thanks. And your friend is ugly. Was 18 at the time and 135 pounds soaking wet. Early 30s now and have since filled out and had multiple relationships. Hookups and random encounters, yet reliving that still stings me and makes me question if it's still true. Be careful what you say to someone, especially about their looks. You never know how much it can impact them. A girl I liked at high school. I would dare to say my first time falling in love. It was in the first year. We talked constantly for a few months. Then I got what I understood as a big hint from her to ask her out. So I finally got my courage and asked her out. She said yes. I was ecstatic. At the end of the date, I decided I would confess my feelings for her, and I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't know this was supposed to be a date. After that we talked it out and decided we should stay friends, but instead of asking for some space for a while to process it, I foolishly agreed, which got me into over a half of a year of hell, not being able to move on because we were still talking all the time, hoping she might eventually change her opinion, which I now know was a bullpoop, but tell that to my 16-year-old self, spiced up with a decent amount of self-loathing and bitterness from my side before I finally moved on. I felt so terrible at the time that I swore to never go through it again, and luckily, I have never dared to approach a girl after that. Asked out and said she didn't even know me, even though she sat right next to me in classes and had talked to me on multiple occasions. Although to be fair, it was partly my fault as I asked out kind of after I lost connection with her. But it fits teach me to stay away from love and make sure anyone I'm going to date is my best friend. I remember one day I was getting off work, construction, in my work gear, and saw this woman walk by the bus stop, and a small book fell out her pocket. Me, excuse me you. Her, cutting me of mid-sentence, I'm sorry, I don't have any spare change. Me, few seconds of confusion. Oh, that's fine, have a good day. Should have at least had the decency of hearing what I have to say. Turns out it was her personal journal, and filled with her thoughts and feelings on life. I now know more about that random stranger than my own friends. I've been denied plenty of times when younger, especially online. It comes with the territory of putting yourself out there. On the flip side, one girl messaged me on AIM, yes, I'm old, years ago. She wanted me to take her to prom, but I was like a last ditch effort, so her mom would buy her a dress or something. She turned out to be a massive losser anyway. I didn't really approach the girl, but we were the male and female leads of a play in drama CL Bud back in grade 9. All the teacher asked us to do was hug at the climax of the play, and in disgust she said "Uno" in front of the whole class, then turned to me and said "No offense." Asked her to confidence, platonically I thought. She turned me down very politely. I realized I had accidentally made it sound like I was asking her out. Cut to a year or so later. She asks me to go skiing, and after a previous experience, when I was too hesitant, I take it the wrong way. Oh well, guess it goes both ways. Luckily now we are friends lol. Was sitting at a bar across from a girl most of the night. We were shooting each other flirty eyes and smiles. She gave me the cue to kind of come over. We started talking, and she said "You are really cute, but I have no idea how short you were." I'm pretty short and had been told my girls my whole life, "If only you were taller, but this bugly hurt." Don't worry though, I'm married with 3 kids now. My wife is almost 4 inches taller than me, haha. Thought this girl from a job was cute and asked her out after the job was done to remain professional. Turns out she was leaving town, but she said when she's back she'll give me a shout and we can go for a drink. I think not the ideal response, but it's better than a no. Then I see on Facebook a few days later she was back in town that same weekend. Honestly a direct no would have been okay. Couple girls in my freshman CL but convinced me to ask one of their friends to homecoming during lunch one day. Turns out they convinced me to do this so that they could publicly laugh at me and shout out how dumb I was to everybody to think that she'd say yes. Really dashed my confidence and self-worth for a long time. I'm a lot better now, but it's probably the worst I ever felt. I was at a rave with my buddy, and I offered these 2 girls to sit on our shoulders. They accepted, but I underestimated the weight of the woman I paired with. Skinny torso, thick thighs, outdoors at night, and I could only hold her for a couple minutes before I had to let her down and walk away in shame. I want to make this clear, I was super awkward and nervous when I did it, and that I've never been in a relationship before. And I know for certain I'm not ugly. They tell me I look like a young Leonardo DiCaprio. So me and my work crew were at lunch in a pizza place when I noticed a girl walk in and out, and a few minutes later she walked back in and placed her order. I had noticed she was glancing at me when I wasn't looking, but I figured she didn't want to be bothered. My buddy, we'll call him O, told me to shoot my shot and that I need to at least try. O is very good at getting with women. I walk up to her and shakily said hello, and if she has a Snapchat, I mentally hit myself for that one. She just says no and turns away. I embarrassed. Sit back down with O, and he cheers me up, and that I should try again on someone else. And then I felt better. But then she walked up to a couple that was sitting nearby and pretended to talk to them. I think I made her afraid to be around me, and I felt horrible that I did that. It just made me stop trying altogether. I've told this story before. Here it is again. Aunties and uncles tried to set me up with a girl, gave me her phone number, told me all parties had been notified, so just call and go on a date. Worked up my courage to call. It was her dad's cell phone. Anyways, he called her over to talk. She had no idea what was going on. Turned out her dad forgot to tell her. And then, being cancelled twice last minute, which I again had to work over my anxiety to reschedule before I vowed to go and become a monk. The worst blind date that didn't happen. But yeah, I accepted no more blind dates from aunties and uncles from there on. Ever have someone look at you for the first time and you can see their eyes fill with disgust and regret? Semicolon dash semicolon. I remember in high school approaching this girl and saying hey. She then proceeded to roll her eyes at me, then begrudgingly say hey back. It was then that I knew I had not blossomed in high school. I later swanned in second year college and modeled, so forget her. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.